Good evening, Bulavinaka and Namaste. We are here at 231 Waimanu Road in Suva, the home of Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan as we gather here to speak to our leaders who have confirmed their participation and to talk directly to you about the issues that matter. We're calling it the final showdown. This is the final leaders debate before we enter the campaign blackout period from midnight tonight. That means no politics from Monday to Tuesday until 6 p.m. Wednesday. After voting is completed, 6 p.m. onwards, we will come back again and then we'll be talking about the count, the results, and how things progress. There are 693,915 registered voters for these elections. Out of this, 77,907 people were registered for pre-poll and postal vote applications approved were 9,916. That means around 606,092 people are listed to vote on Wednesday, December 14th. To talk to you directly, we have Fiji Labour Party leader, Mr. Mahendra Chaudhry. Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhry, on behalf of our viewers for accepting our invitation. Professor Biman Prasad, the leader of the National Federation Party. Thank you, Professor Prasad. Mr. Sitiveni Rabuka, the leader of People's Alliance. Thank you, Mr. Rabuka. Viliame, Gavoka, the leader of SODELPA. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Vijay.
Mr. Savenaca Narube, Unity Fiji leader. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation. Fiji First is not in the house. We extended our invitation. We have been sending invites from early November. No response, and they're not here. There's a chair here for Fiji First, but they did not give any confirmation and no response. So we get on with it. First question, Mr. Chaudhry, what is your message to the people who are worried, fearful, and feel uncertain going into these elections?
My message is that they should not worry and should not be fearful. They should cast the fear away and come and vote. We have an assurance from the commander of the RFMF, which is to be taken seriously. He has said that the results of the elections will be respected. So that is sufficient. Now, in our campaigns too, we have been trying to address this issue and encourage the people to come and vote for a change. If they want a change, they have to be a part of it, and they can only do that by coming on the 14th of December and casting their vote.
Professor Prasad.
Well, I say to the people of Fiji, the movement for change is unstoppable. Mr. Rabuka and I can see that. I'm sure the other leaders can see that. And all I'm saying to the people, stay strong, be brave, remain united. Because Frank and Ayaz cannot stop this movement for change. And they cannot stop the overwhelming force of the people in this country who want to change. Who want to change the government. And as Mr. Chaudhry said, the commander has said the right thing. Any sensible leader, any head of any independent institution in this country which respects the Constitution would condemn any attempt by Frank and Ayaz to create fear in the minds of the people. So I say to the people, stay strong, be brave, stay united. Nothing can stop the overwhelming force of the people who want change.
Mr. Rabuka.
I'm very sad that some people are fearful, and each of them should really try and find out the source of that fear. The source of that fear is this current government. To get rid of the source, get rid of this government. Get rid of Fiji First. Come and vote, do not vote for them.
Mr. Gavoka.
Thank you, Vijay. Perhaps I should relate to you an occasion where in Parliament, sitting at the opposition chambers, we wanted to determine the views of the youth on some issues that we were trying to discuss at the time. And we saw these hundreds of youth playing at Albert Park, right next to, we could see them from where we were. And we thought that we would quickly go in and ask some youth on what the thoughts are on those issues. We sent out our guys to talk to them. They came back and said, none of those youth wanted to talk to us. They were afraid that they would lose their scholarships, they would affect their career, and all sorts of excuses they came up with. And it has always stayed with me that here we live in a country where youth are afraid to express their views and their opinions. And I was born free. I was born in a free country. And I just want the youth of this country, the people of this country, to realize that we are all free. That fear is up to us to remove come the 14th.
Yep.
Remove it from our mates. We should not be living in fear. And one of my biggest concerns, Vijay, is that our people are beginning to accept the situation today as normal. No, it is better than what we have experienced. Taste the freedom that people around this table have tasted, and that it belongs to you. Please come out and vote. That freedom is yours, and the assurance is there from the authorities, and exercise your rights as a free person in this country. Thank you.
Mr. Narube.
Yes, we are unanimous on that. I think this government has played fear to stay in power. Where government plays on fear, I think we should all be unanimous to remove that fear. And that tactic has worked up to now until the commander issued his statement. Commander of the military forces issued his statement that says, no, democracy will prevail. The voters' voice will be heard. So that takes away their only weapon left. So let's go and vote freely, whoever you think should take this country forward.
If you just joined us, Fiji First leader is not in the house, empty chair here, because they did not come back with a response and are not here to participate in the leaders' debate. Next question, Professor Prasad, you'll be starting that.
Sure.
What are your plans for racial unity and accountable leadership?
Vijay, that's a very good question. I think let's talk about accountable leadership in this country. After 15 years and spending about $50 billion, if you add all the budgets for 15 years, where is Frank Bainimarama? And you quite rightly pointed out, his chair is empty. Does he think that he is not accountable to the people of Fiji? Why is he not here? Why were his other reps, youth reps? Does he not think that youths are important in this country? Women reps, none of them came for the debate. So, the question about racial unity is not a problem in Fiji, in my view, because the people are working together. We have seen that. Mr. Rabuka and I know that. We've had joint rallies. We've seen people coming together, eating together, discussing together. People are together. There are only two people right now in this country, and I want to say this to the people of Fiji. There are only two people in this country right now who are trying to divide our people. They are lying about race-based scholarships. I saw something where initially they said, they go to Indo-Fijian audience and say, oh, you will not get a scholarship because Rabuka wants to bring race-based scholarship. Then I saw something where they're saying, oh, ETOK students are going to miss out on scholarship. These are the only two people. Ayaz says to the Indo-Fijians that you will commit treachery, you will be treacherous if you vote for Fiji First and not vote for NFP. So their level of campaign, Vijay, is really gutter level. Their rhetoric is personal, and they are the people who are trying to divide the people of this country. The partnership that I have formed with Mr. Rabuka, with the People's Alliance Party, and we as leaders here today, we understand the common goal is to unite the people of this country, because we are talking about issues, we are not talking about the divide, we are not fear-mongering. So we have a plan already to bring the people together. We are actually bringing the people together. So the only two people, and let me say this again to the people of Fiji, there are right now in this country only two people who are talking about the divide, who are talking about racial politics, racial policies, when none of the leaders present here today have said anything about race-based policies on anything.
Mr. Rabuka, you've been called a snake by the Prime Minister, you've been labelled as a boogeyman. What's your plans for racial unity and accountable leadership?
My plan is, first of all, I'd like to say that there is racial unity in Fiji. We are one. We have been together for a long time. The events of 1987 might have jolted our journey, but I believe we all came together. The rest of the world probably saw divisions, a few utterances made here and overseas, but I believe we are together. When you go down to the settlements, you go down to the villages, there is no animosity, there is no division. It's very simple to bring the races together because they're already together. And all we have to do is provide good leadership and raise the national morale. The morale will show when there is a good morale, will show that when there is no fear. We started, the first question was about fear. And now we're talking about race relations and racial unity. We have racial unity, but both races or all races have fear. It is the source of fear is the government.
Mr. Gavoka.
Thank you, Vijay. Vijay, the people of this country want to be united. I think the common numerator here is that we are one. And the denominator here is our love of our country. Unfortunately, some segments of the population need to be uplifted. And I speak primarily about the Itoke. There are 32 decrees that have become laws that are discriminatory, that today need to be removed to give that sense of confidence back to the Itoke in this country. You have to look after each segment of the population. Our brothers, the Indo-Fijians, are a major part of us. We have a policy here to set aside a fund to help bring redress to the descendants of the Girimitias. I mean, that's uplifting our brothers. And their need to lease lands, we will help them with the premiums on their land, and of course the education that is going to be across the board to educate every Fijian in this country for free up to their first degree. And our policies are very inclusive, and we cherish the cosmopolitan makeup of this country. We value it very strongly. It is our strength, the diversity. And we, SODELPA, will work hard to protect the well-being of every community in this country. We have the islanders who are also part of the major part of us. We will be setting up commissions to determine their status. The Solomon Islanders, the Vanuatuans, Rambi, Rotuma, Kiowa, all these are part of the mix that we need to look after to have racial interaction, harmony, and unity within Fiji.
Thank you, Mr. Gavoka. Mr. Narube.
Yeah, unity basically comes from bottom up, from the people. You cannot legislate unity. This government has tried to legislate unity. Race is always going to be here. Race issues. That doesn't mean we are racist. But this government is treading on this kind of tone to say that anything that is raised on ethnic grounds, ethnic improvement, is racism. It's not. But it is being legislated and it's being abused. And I think that abuse comes from legal discrimination of that national unity. Scholarships, distribution. Where is the equity of that? Senior positions in government. We have made it quite clear in our manifesto, we will address that. And board members of government. That's the equity that will bring more unity. So equity is something that we will retain in our manifesto. And our vision is really unity in diversity.
Mr. Chaudhry.
Thank you, Vijay. The Fiji Labour Party has always been a multiracial party. We believe in unity in diversity, and we've promoted that concept. Of course, there are parties which use politics of fear, politics of race, and we've seen this. We cannot totally write off these things. They do exist, and we have to handle these situations very, very sensitively and carefully, because we've had events in this country which have militated against racial unity. So therefore, leaders have to be very, very careful about what they do, what they say, and how they act. As far as accountable leadership is concerned, again, transparency and accountability has been the hallmark of Labour governments. We believe in transparency and accountability. We believe that every government should be accountable and transparent, and that the public have the right to ask them any question, and that aside from that, the public must have information about government, about how they are governed. But here what we see is that information is not given out. Even simplest of inquiries, if you want to make from a department, you are asked to send an email. They don't want to answer questions on the phone. So there's a lot of secrecy, secretive procedures that they're using, and we've got to overcome all this. So yes, we should all, as leaders, promote multiracialism. We've been through a lot, which has really set us back, both economically and socially as a country. And this is a very good question that you asked the leaders today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhry. Mr. Rabuka, first up, this question is for you. The Constitution has a requirement for the setting up of an Accountability and Transparency Commission. What is your plan regarding that?
I think you'll see that it's part of our manifesto. We would like to do that and set it up very quickly. There has been none operational since the Constitution came into being. It's all been lip service or paper service, whatever we call it, because it's there on paper, but not been actioned. We would like to bring that in, and it is a need right now, not only looking forward, also looking back at what has happened here in Fiji so far.
Mr. Gavoka.
Thank you, Vijay. I've been 8 years in Parliament, and transparency is something that is in very short supply in Parliament. As you know, we have this infamous Standing Order 51, and bills...
You must have an endurance trophy.
Me and Dr. Biman, a bill comes in on Monday. A bill is what? It's a draft of a law, right? And a draft needs to go through a process to eventually become law, right? There is a bill that comes in on Monday and becomes law by Wednesday. You don't know what the bill is all about. I mean, I believe in the governments of Mr. Chaudhry and Mr. Rabuka, you at least were given 2 months when a bill was to be introduced. You had some idea what was coming into Parliament. But not today. I mean, that's transparency. And it's cascading into just about every area of government in Fiji today. So yes, Vijay, certainly something that is huge in our agenda, in our manifesto, and something that we will bring into place when you come into government.
Mr. Narube.
Accountability, transparency, they all go together. And I see this is one of the weakest government on both counts. So it is in the Constitution, but as you said, it has not been executed, precisely because that is how they operate as a government. They lack transparency, they lack accountability. Why on earth should a people vote for a government that is not accountable, is not transparent?
Mr. Chaudhry.
This is on accountability and transparency.
That's right.
Yes. Well, this is it's a constitutional requirement, and we've been saying this for a long time, that this government, they decreed the constitution, and they're not following the transparency and accountability provisions, which are very clear. Why? I think it's because they don't want to hold themselves accountable, they don't want to be questioned, and this can only mean that the corruption that there is in government will remain hidden. It will not be investigated. So where is this accountability that they're talking about? The Attorney General is talking about accountability, he's talking about transparency when it suits him, but he doesn't practice it. This government does not practice it. And people have remarked during our campaigns that this is the most corrupt government in the history of Fiji.
Professor Prasad.
Well, Vijay, this is a very important question because it goes to the heart of good governance, transparency and accountability. It is, as Mr. Chaudhry said, a constitutional requirement. I mean, the problem with these two-man government, Ayaz and Frank, is that they have imposed a constitution on the people of this country. And if you look at the record in the last 8 years, they actually don't follow their own constitution. So this is a constitutional requirement. There is no excuse, should not be any excuse in 8 years that they have not set up a accountability and transparency commission. And it is very clear that these people do not want to abide by or follow what the constitution requires them to do. So Ayaz and Frank Bainimarama are full of talk. When it suits them, they talk about transparency and accountability. They make big noises, in campaign. But as Mr. Chaudhry said and other leaders have said, this is the most hidden agenda of this government, because they do not want to set up anything, even though it's a constitutional requirement, which means they are not following their own constitution. And so what I'm saying is, I think the next government, this should be a priority.
Section 121 of the Constitution 9 states a written law shall provide the Commission with the jurisdiction, authority and powers to receive and investigate complaints against permanent secretaries and all persons holding a public office. So,
Vijay, I want to just say this, honest leaders will have no problem with setting up a accountability and transparency commission, because the objective is very clear.
So you'll set it up?
Of course.
Mr. Gavoka, will you bring in the Freedom of Information and Code of Conduct Acts? If yes, then when?
Vijay, that will be done almost immediately.
Naka.
As I was saying earlier on, we have been afraid. There is fear in this country, when that freedom to express your opinion, to have your say on anything, it's quite sad. So freedom of information is fundamental, to the way we do things, to a government, that we must have access to it, in a manner that is consistent with the freedom that we enjoy in this country. Yeah? So definitely yes, it'll be something that SODELPA will implement ASAP.
Mr. Narube.
Oh yes, big yes, fully agree. I think there's a consensus around the table on that. It's for good governance, it's all for the good of the country, and we will go along with that.
Mr. Chaudhry.
Indeed. In fact, I must point out that in 1999 when we came in, these were the first set of legislation that we had proposed. Code of Conduct, Freedom of Information, and setting up an anti-corruption commission. And the bills are still there, but we weren't given the time. We weren't given time to implement them. But these are important pieces of legislation. These sort of legislations keep the government accountable to the people, and they must receive priority over other legislation.
Professor Prasad.
Again, Vijay, this is a constitutional requirement, and obviously the Attorney General, or Yaz and Frank Bainimarama have forgotten about it. Let me also say this, that, and Bill knows it, there was a Code of Conduct bill presented to Parliament. It went to the Parliamentary Standing Committee, and despite all that, despite many of us in Parliament, we've raised this issue in Parliament a number of times. We have asked them, where is the bill? When are you going to debate this? When are you going to pass this? And basically there's been silence from the Fiji First government. So again, the Code of Conduct legislation is very important for public officers, for ministers, for members of Parliament, and those who hold public office. These people do not want to subject themselves. They want to subject everybody else and give lectures to everybody else around the country, but they have not been subjecting themselves, at least what I know in the Parliament for the last 8 years, themselves to these requirements.
Mr. Rabuka.
I agree with all those comments, and for us it's one of the things we want to do in the first 100 days, and I think it will be a great thing for the country. The Fiji First government thrived on secrecy. It's like being on a mushroom farm. You're kept in the dark and you're fed whatever.
That's the first segment. Take a break. We'll be right back after this one.
What I did in 2006 is to clean up the mess in the study.
When there's been Itoke leadership, everybody has been embraced.
He cannot stomach the fact that he is not in government.
You said that you couldn't pay out bonuses, but this shows an increase in board directors' fees.
You are wanting to lead the country, not me. I'm asking you the question again, back to corporal punishment. Right. What's your stand on it?
Fiji First cannot intervene into a personal matter.
Absolutely, you can for small businesses.
I was very surprised when he came out with that statement that I would conduct a coup if I lose. Not
Hand
me.
on your heart.
It's him.
No, you're a joke.
No, you are a joke.
You're a joke.
You're a joke. Don't bring that up. You don't.
No, I gotta bring it up. You were commander.
But yes,
Every military officer and serviceman at the time was under your
you've
command.
forgotten you trained them.
Bulavinaka, this is Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan, sponsored by Salt and Pepper Home Decor, living in high quality. Watch it live on the Fiji Village Facebook page. Download the all-new Fiji Village app. Get the latest news direct to your mobile. Get the latest sports updates from our scoreboards online. Navigate easily through our categories. Watch videos from Straight Talk interviews, local music videos, sports and many more. You can now easily listen to your favorite radio stations from your phone. Download the all-new Fiji Village app right now.
What I did in 2000.
Welcome back. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan, and tonight we have the Fiji Labour Party, NFP, People's Alliance, SODELPA and Unity Fiji in this leaders debate. Fiji First Leader Vorenge Bainimarama is not here. The chair is empty. They did not come back with a response. We continue. Mr. Narube, your question. You start things off this time. What is your plan on dealing with crime, increasing use of drugs and violence in the country?
I think we talk a lot about the economic crisis brought on by COVID, and now the cost of living crisis. I think we don't talk too much on the social crisis that it kind of happens after all those economic issues that we are facing. So I think you mentioned crimes and you mentioned drugs and violence. There are a few other things in there that we are dealing with at the moment. We have, of course, the rape, the prostitution that comes with that. And those are quite serious social problems for us. So what we need to do is really to go to the root of it, which is economic. Economic prosperity, I think, will add a lot of solutions to that. So we are in our manifesto, our number one priority is eradicating poverty. And that's in the rural as well as in the urban centers. So we have raised the priority of law and order. So allocation of police will be increased in our government. So those are the kind of things that we will implement. There is a discipline issue as well, as far as our children, our youths are concerned. And that's a huge issue, discipline. And we talked a little bit of that early on in one of your shows, the kind of disciplinary laws that are preventing the discipline of our children. So that's where we will be.
Mr. Chaudhry?
Yes, I agree with Mr. Narube. These are social issues, and poverty is also closely related to this. People end up with a life of crime if they're poor, if they don't have a job, if they don't have an income, and particularly our younger people, they get into bad company and then are drawn into a life of crime. So we've got to look after that by growing the economy, by creating opportunities, by providing jobs, and if we could also institute a program which will take our youth off the street, those who are unemployed, those who are dropouts and all that. For this, we have proposed in our manifesto to create a national services scheme which will absorb up to 5,000 youths, dropouts, unemployed youths, upskill them for a period of 3 years. They will get a stipend so that they have a bit of money in their pocket. They will be upskilled so that they can later on join a permanent workforce. We've got to do something about this problem. We just can't say that it exists and do nothing about it. We've got to put money into it, into this kind of programs. Per se, our people are law-abiding, but circumstances drive them into this sort of thing. So we've got to take care of that first. And drugs is the same thing. Glue sniffing is very prevalent now, I'm told, amongst our younger people. And a friend of mine who owns a shop here in the heart of Suva says that glue is one of the fastest and top-selling items in his shop. So we need to do something. This is a serious problem. Violence in the country. Well, of course, you'll have the violence in the country because if you look at the governance, the manner of governance in this country, that promotes violence. The Prime Minister's conduct.
Yeah.
Prime Minister's conduct in the case of Honorable Tikonduan Dua sets an example. Right?
We'll move on to Professor Prasad.
Yeah, Vijay, I think this is a very important and critical question. These sort of things, apart from being a social problem and coming out of other issues, it is a hidden cost of a mismanaged, depressed, disastrous economy of Frank Bainimarama and Ayaz Sayed Qayyum. I mean, the question is, they've been bragging about unprecedented growth. If we had unprecedented growth in this country, why are people turning to drugs? Why are they committing crime? I mean, this is a fundamental question because the economic benefits are not spread out. It is because poverty is increasing. And in Parliament, Vijay, we have raised this issue a number of times, and Mr. Chaudhry just touched on it. When the NFP moved a motion in Parliament, because we do not understand, the police don't understand, the social welfare ministry doesn't understand fully as to the root causes of drug and crime. And so when we moved a motion to say, have a national inquiry, a parliamentary inquiry, what Frank Bainimarama does, opposes it, goes out of Parliament and assaults the president of the party, Piyoti Kondondua. It was a shameful act. But what we are saying is that we should be talking about the priorities. What is Ayaz talking about now? Building a road from Suva to Nandi, costing $1.5 billion. And here we as leaders, we are talking about directing money, cutting wastage, putting it into areas, whether it's unemployment scheme, whether it's putting youths into technical and vocational education, which is another disaster that they have created. So, but they don't want to talk about this problem. That's why the Prime Minister, Frank Bainimarama, is not here, because they don't want to engage in these sort of things. So, the first thing we will do, Vijay, is, because sometimes just throwing money blindly, which this government has been doing, doesn't work. So you have to understand the first thing the next government will do, and Mr. Rabuka and I have talked about this, that we should have a national parliamentary inquiry into drug and violence and crime in this country. Look at where the root causes are, where are the flashpoints, where are the data. Is it about one particular ethnic group? When the Bureau of Statistics chief brought out this data which showed that 75% of the poor came from the Itoke community, he gets sacked. Ayaz refused to debate that report which came to Parliament. So we are not going to do that. We are not going to hide information. We are going to have that and then devise policies, whether it's through unemployment benefits, whether it's to put people into technical vocational education, and have a very, very clear plan to help our people.
Mr. Rabuka, what is the People's Alliance plan?
First of all, what you have mentioned or you asked us to answer are indications of very low morale. And it can come from a sense of poverty. I do not say poverty, a sense of poverty, a sense of need, a sense of want. When you're talking about, if you are going to go into the economics side of things and study the household income, you'll probably find that there's a lot of poverty about. But when you look at the effects of low morale that you're talking about, violence, drug use, what is the other one? All those things are happening or prevalent in urban centers. When you go to the village, there is very little of that going on, because the people, although do not have respectable household income, they are okay. The morale is good, because communal living and the community is so closely bound together that everybody looks out for each other. So it is economics, but it gives rise to low morale, which results in all those bad indications of society.
What will you do about it?
Well, we would like to. All right. Those things that my colleagues, the leaders, have come up with, test for jobs, not unemployment benefits so much as cash for jobs. We can get the people. Mr. Chaudhry talked about national service scheme. That had been talked about before. The rural engineer unit of the army was started as a conservation corps to bring out so-called dropouts, so-called people who couldn't get into the regular stream of employment. Bring them into employment, give them wages, and allow them to be productive and trained so that they can look after themselves after their initial period of service.
Mr. Gavoka.
Thank you, Vijay. At the outset, one would think that better policing would solve the problem. I think better policing would be a part of the equation, but what has been articulated by my colleagues is true. Poverty being an issue, youth being idle is also a huge factor in this. So, the education policies that we have is to ensure that everyone has something to fall back on, something to do, whether it's a scheme that the labor has, or the military, the engineering corps to be a training ground for engineers. We must make sure that our people have skills. You know what they say, an idle, when you're idle, you end up with a lot of inequities. One thing I must say is also the role played by the churches. They need a lot of spiritual guidance is required, and we would certainly encourage the churches to be more active in these areas. Poverty is a huge factor, and of course, paying people $2.69 an hour, that is criminal in a country that is boasting about its unprecedented economic growth over how many years. That's criminal. Let me just end with this, Vijay. I live in Nandronga, and when I come to Suva, I live in a house where my son lives, and it's like a fortress. There are barricades everywhere. In my village, I don't have any barricades. My doors are open, anyone can walk in and walk out. But if anything that we want to accomplish as leaders, and certainly SODELPA, over the next couple of years, we want to build homes in Suva, in the cities, that are not built like fortresses. That is, to me, is a sad indictment about our country.
Thank you, Mr. Gavoka. Next question, Professor Biman Prasad, e-ticketing challenges. We are gathering all issues from different people, and this came as a contentious issue for many. People are facing many challenges. You cannot top up cards at easily accessible places. Young people are facing, everyone is facing difficulties in redeeming the transfer to the e-ticketing card. What are the experiences of the people on the ground from your perspective, and what will you do?
Well, I think it's an important question, Vijay, and I'm glad that you raised this. I mean, my view is the government is here to save the people. The government's job is to make people's life easier. What I've noticed in the last 8 years, and I've been going around and listening to the people, is that people have to learn to live with all kinds of government's rules, which are made overnight, which is not discussed with them, and this is what must change. I mean, the driver in Sabu, for example, who was fined $1,000 because he tried to help kids who did not have a money in the e-ticket card. So basically, I mean, e-ticketing is good. I'm not saying that it's not good. I think it's good. But if it must work for everyone. If it doesn't work for everyone, government must make sure that it should not make rules and fines which actually put people at a disadvantage. And not just e-ticketing, Vijay. If you look at, there's so many rules that these people have brought in under Order 51, laws, legislation, regulations. I've said in Parliament that when you bring a bill, a good government, when they bring a bill to Parliament, they attach a draft set of regulations that they're going to develop later on. What this government has done, I raised it in Parliament, I said, why can't you bring a draft set of regulations so that we can also have a debate on it? They bring in a bill and say the regulations will come in later. And then there is no consultation, no discussion, and when it is applied, people find it very, very onerous and difficult to get things done. So government's job is to make the ordinary people's life easier. Not the middle class, not the rich, because they have other ways of getting things done. But the ordinary people, in my view, in the last 8 years, the people that I've talked to, have really suffered under so many rules that this government has brought without carefully thinking about it.
We'll come back to e-ticketing. Mr. Rabuka, what's the People's Alliance plan on e-ticketing, the challenges that people are raising?
We had thought it was a simple issue, but it's not. when you try to accommodate the children that go to school and do not have enough in the e-ticket to get to school and back, we thought that like a first aid solution would be allow the bus driver to take some money from them. And then one bus operator heard that and he said, "Sir, don't do that, don't do that." I said, "Okay, how can you accommodate that?" And he said, there are now mobile recharging facilities that can be done. All right. So it means that there needs to be consultation before we come up with a solution that is workable for the passenger, the bus operator, and Vodafone.
Mr. Gavoka.
Vijay, the network across the country is still not sufficient.
Correct.
To fully meet the requirements of our people in terms of e-ticketing. So we would allow some cases where people can pay cash, and then work on improving the networks until you're able to meet the requirements of the entire population. Some urban areas don't have any network, and you're expecting them to go travel miles and get recharged, which in itself is a costly exercise. So we would agree, we would implement e-ticketing together with a cash component, a cash solution, while we try to resolve this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Gavoka. Mr. Narube.
E-ticketing should never have been introduced. We are a very poor country, and we were against the introduction of e-ticketing. Why? Because passengers pay in advance before they travel. There are poor people that don't even have cash for food. Then they pay their bus fares through e-ticketing and wait until to travel. So to me, that was a no-no. We copied this from abroad, wholesale. So I talked a lot when this was introduced, and the cost to the people. Cards that are lost, cards that are unused. And I estimated that for $3 million a month that goes to Vodafone. So that's a huge, huge cost to the population.
What will you do?
We would allow both cash and e-ticket.
Mr. Chaudhry.
I agree with Mr. Narube. We also very vigorously opposed this when it was being introduced, because we saw inequity in this. As he pointed out, that not all are rich, and there is a minimum amount you have to spend on this and wait to travel. But Vijay, this is not the only problem in the transport industry. We propose to undertake a holistic review of the entire transport industry. We have problems with the taxi industry.
Public transport.
Yes, and then you have problems with the minibus, the carriers. Yesterday I was in Nandi and talking to the minibus operators. We were the ones who legalized in '99 the minibus operations. They were operating before illegally, and because they were providing service, my government legalized them. There are things like that. There are some operators in the taxi industry who have up to 60, 70 permits, and the drivers who are driving for them don't have a chance. So you've got to rationalize the whole thing. You've got to give opportunity to everybody to participate in this industry. It should not be run by a few overlords. And this is what exactly is happening. So we propose to undertake a holistic review of the industry and sort this out, because there are a lot of problems in there.
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhry. Mr. Rabuka and leaders, I'm going to go through some stats, and these are important for the women of this country. There are 4 statistics that show the real issues for women and girls in Fiji. We have double the global rates of violence against women and girls. 72% of Fijian women experience one or more types of violence in their lifetime. Fiji has 50% unmet contraceptive needs, which means women cannot negotiate over their sexual relationships with men and are suffering due to that. Fijian women from rapid care analysis studies do 3 to 5 times the unpaid care, domestic and communal work as men. And ILO says women do 76% of unpaid care work in the world. But this is not reflected in our leadership and policies. We have some of the lowest rates of women in national leadership in the world. What will be your gender equality and gender justice focused policies? The specific ones, please, Mr. Rabuka.
Thank you very much, Vijay. First of all, when we established the party and started looking for our candidates, we tried very hard to be conscious of the gender equation in our participation. We can only encourage our women to be free to participate freely. In the last 16 days have been the 16 days of activism against domestic violence, and most of the domestic violence against women. Our policies in development are open. There is no special thing to be an obstacle for women wanting to get on in life. I believe that when that is properly done, and even if we have to police it to make sure that there is equity in the attention given to our women, we need to be proactive in the policing of that. We need to be proactive rather than waiting until the women complain. We have to make sure that everybody observes the guidelines for allowing equitable participation of the women in everything we do in Fiji. I was going to comment on that when I looked around the table. No party leader is a woman.
What will you do about it?
Well, it's open. These positions of leadership in political parties are elected offices. So we must allow our women to stand for election. Unfortunately, they are outnumbered.
Mr. Gavoka.
Thank you, Vijay. At the outset, let me just say that we have the highest number of women standing for elections this year, which is something we are proud of. But Vijay, there's still this sense of reluctance on their part to be part of the political arena. It's something that we need to encourage. In our case, the Rote Mumukepa was very instrumental in talking to some of the young ladies to throw their head into the ring and be part of politics. It still is a huge challenge. I think we want them to be about 30% of parliaments in the coming years. I think we are very far from it. But we're certainly doing what we can to empower them. Which, in terms of violence against them, I've said this many times in Parliament, poverty is the biggest reason why there's violence against women. And, it goes back to minimum wage, goes back to a lot of the policies that are not creating an equitable, platform for everyone. Education plays a big role in this. We want to empower women to be strong, and hence our policy on free tertiary, into universities and technical colleges for everyone to always have some skills. And then we also have these SMEs for women. We have an allocation of $5 million a year to help the women engage in commercial activities. They are a huge part of us. But for too long, we still have this patriarchal mindset that puts women at a disadvantage. For us on domestic duties, I'm glad that you brought it up. We want to formalize the employment of those in the domestic duties sector. They should get a minimum wage. We'll have proper legislation for them. They must be formal in the way they are employed. They must come to work at 8 in the morning and go home at 4. Maybe not all of us can afford them, but maybe 2 or 3 families can take on one domestic duty, one lady. They have to be uplifted, Vijay, and that is pretty core to our policies going forward.
Well, those statistics that you quoted are scary. I think we must all combine to try to get those numbers down to more reasonable levels. I'll just go on the gender-based violence that you mentioned. I mean, this is a big issue around the Pacific, and also in Fiji, of course. And we have been grappling with this issue for a long time. There hasn't been any decrease in the statistics. So what is it? I think I can agree with the leader of SODELPA that it's basically coming back to money, coming back to the economy, coming back to the adequacy of their financial sources. And also a lot of attitudes need to change, especially amongst us men. We need to change that attitudes and be more, I guess, aware of the issues that the women faced. So a lot of awareness, but we will work with the NGOs to try to find solutions to this. Of course, our economic program, as we have stated, will double GDP in 4 years. So hopefully that will also raise incomes to all families and reduce this number over the years.
Mr. Chaudhry.
We propose to set up a domestic violence and child exploitation task force, which will engage in Violence Never campaign with the media, with the social organizations, with the religious organizations. We all have to create awareness about this. And I think the media can play a big role in this, but not enough is being done except reporting statistics like you've done, but to promote, this the awareness and bring in reforms in thinking of our people, as said by Mr. Gavoka. But this is not the only problem that women face. You have domestic dispute resolution problems. Domestic courts are not properly resourced, and they, as a result of the disputes not being resolved in time, they do suffer a lot. So we've got to streamline that as well. Then we have women's health issues. That is another problem where the Ministry of Health is not sufficiently resourced to set up proper facilities for women's health, reproductive health, including mammography, SEP smears, etc., etc. And so there's a host of problems that our women face. Actually, I find it a bit patronizing to talk about women's problems. I'd rather that they themselves discuss this, and they should take up the leadership in this, and the government should really resource this area.
I asked this question because you are the leaders. I've already asked the question of the women, and of course, a whole of community approach is needed. On to Professor Prasad.
Yeah, I think this is a very, very important question, Vijay, and we have said 5 things in our vision document. We talked about partnerships with the NGOs and domestic violence advocates. We talked about targeted legislation, community engagement, a strong government-supported, NGO advocacy, education, improved support and resources for victims of domestic violence, etc. But I think the more important thing is that this is a government which has actually worked against the NGOs and women advocates. I mean, when you look at this government attacking people like Shamima Ali, who's spent her entire life, good working life in this country, setting up the Fiji Women's Crisis Center. You look at Fiji Women's Rights Movement, you look at all the other NGOs, these are women of repute, these are women of standing, these are women, brave women who have advocated these things. And all government should have done, in the last 8 years or the last 15 years, is to support these people. And I think part of the problem is that our women have been facing obstacles, to get into the leadership. And so from And I think you're right. I mean, we as leaders, I mean, if you look at our party and if you look at the People's Alliance, our partners in this election, we have some very, very strong women in our party. We have Lerora Geregere Tambu, our vice president. We put her in the leadership position. We have Shashi Kiran. We have Biniana. We have Saini Nambo, who is the general secretary of the party. The assistant secretary, Anshulata, is another woman. Kirti Patel, somebody who... So we are trying to provide that signal. And I don't agree that women are not, or women are kind of reluctant to take on leadership. I think we need to look at what are the obstacles, what have we created. And I know we haven't discussed it with Mr. Rabuka, but when we get into government, we should actually seriously think about, bringing in legislation so that we can have reserved seats, for women in parliament, because that's the national leadership. And the amount of money that this government had wasted, I mean, if we had put in, I mean, what does it stop a government from putting money, millions of dollars into the Fiji Women Crisis Center, Fiji Women's Rights Movement, many other women NGOs, work with civil society organizations, church leaders, religious leaders, to ensure that, we provide the resources. Because one thing that this government has not learned is working with people, because governments cannot do everything. You got to empower organizations, provide the resources. They are the people who know. And Save knows this. Vijay, we looked at the economic cost of domestic violence, the economic cost of discrimination, and the lack of women participation in the economic cost is huge. In fact, the Reserve Bank did something, and I did some more analysis after that based on the methodology that they had created. And I think, if I can remember correctly, we were looking at, like $500-600 million economic loss as a result of, domestic violence. So it is a very, very important subject. And I think we as leaders, have a duty.
Thank you, Professor
to
Prasad.
actually deal with this.
Thank you. We'll be back after this break.
If no one hits that 28 or more than 28, who will you be ready to work with?
We're quite ready to form a coalition amongst the opposition party. But we will not form a coalition with Fiji First.
Will SODELPA consider a coalition with NFP?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Some people are receiving the same salaries today which they were receiving in 2012. You look at what salary the ministers are drawing. Prime Minister gets $1,000 a day, roughly.
Mr. Rabuka, what is your stand on Ito Kailan?
I said in Fijian, and on the two in the Sangan Lewan. It is ours, but we have no control over it.
They will go for every boat in this country. We will go for every boat in this country.
We have identified $1 billion of wastage in the budget 1 year.
Review the laws. Review the laws. Review the structure.
After the election?
Otherwise, we'll make false promises.
I don't want you to make false promises. I'm just asking you because there's people wanting to know. As an aspiring Prime Minister, how do you look at that?
You talking about Mahendra?
I'm talking about you.
Oh, I thought you were saying expiring Prime Minister.
Savenaca. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan. Sponsored by Salt and Pepper Home Decor. Living in high quality. Watch it live on the Fiji Village Facebook page.
This is Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Tonight we have the Fiji Labour Party, NFP, People's Alliance, SODELPA and Unity Fiji leaders on Straight Talk, talking about issues before we enter the campaign blackout period. We invited the Fiji First leader. There was no response since November. Empty chair here, but no response was received. Mr. Gavoka, a question for you. Our electoral laws were amended last year, which included women having to change their birth certificate if they want to use their married name on their voter ID card, passport or any other official ID. married women have had to put an asterisk and put their husband's name on their birth certificate if they chose to use their married name. What is your stand on this, and what will you do about it?
You know, Vijay, I asked the women, and I said, do you understand what is happening here? And they said, we don't know. They don't understand why this happened, Vijay. Yeah? Short answer, Vijay, we will give them the freedom to use the names of their husbands that they have been using all this while. That's it. Otherwise, it gets...
Don't have to put it in the birth certificate with an asterisk?
No. It gets very complicated and very confusing.
And stupid.
Yeah, and stupid. This simple. We've been doing it they've been doing it this way, and we don't understand. Even they don't understand. I've asked them. They don't understand why it has changed. So we'll take it back to what it was.
Mr. Narube.
The women are paying a huge price for a decision by this government based on a court case that they lost. I think that is the long and short about this. They're paying the price for that case. And I think it's totally unfair on women. I think we will go back to wherever we were before this, and straighten it out. I haven't heard any country in the world that does that. There may be some, but why are we doing it here? Just because of convenience of this government. It sacrifices anybody, including women, in this particular case.
Professor Prasad.
That stupid law will go in 100 days. That's pretty clear, because it is as stupid as one could ever think. This is another example of government making laws which nobody needs. This is another example of government trying to make things difficult for people, making laws which doesn't make sense to anyone, and it's nonsense. So it will go in the first 100 days.
Mr. Chaudhry.
We opposed this right from the beginning, and it will be revoked.
Mr. Rabuka.
We think it's a stupid law, and it will go very, very quickly when we get in. It will be within the first 100 days. It is an assault on our ladies, our women, on their right of choosing which name they want to go by. They have their bank account in their husband's name. They have their passports. They have changed over time. When they got married, they changed their passport to take on their husband's name. Some may have retained their maiden name. The funny thing about it is, at one stage during the women's rights movement days, they didn't want to use their husband's name. Now that this government come in, it's not their will. It's the will of the government. Why should they force the will of the government onto our women? We will change it.
Incidentally, Vijay, this matter is before the court, and a judgment is being awaited for a long time.
Moving on, Mr. Narube, next question for you. What is your stand on Itoke land, knowing that more than 90% is Itoke land in this country, cannot be sold according to the constitution? What is your plan for the Itoke land used to develop industry? A lot of talk has happened about landowner involvement, tenancy, getting markets ready for farmers. Can you be specific?
Yeah, this is a very important issue. And this is where I think the secret of our development is in the use of natural resources. We have that here. And I think we should focus more on reviving this industry that are based on resources. And we should. There's been many attempts in the past to try to revive the use of land, to increase the use of resources. They have miserably failed. Why? Because they were disjointed. They were not end-to-end kind of a program for it. So we have one program that we are championing as Unity Fiji. It's called the Economic Transformation Program. And that's basically to use our resources And that to me is the answer to our economic issues here. And that is based on a few platforms, which is just providing machines to the landowners or the tenants, providing what we're calling the processing, value adding, and capital, and changing the mindsets around that. So that to me will revolutionize this economy. We need something like that to grow our economy. So we are implementing that economic transformation program that provide the rural areas, particularly where 60% of those that are in poverty live, with jobs and incomes.
Professor Prasad.
Well, Vijay, I think we need to completely relook at the agriculture sector if we are trying to link industry, landowner participation, economic benefits, tenants getting into agriculture, getting markets. I mean, Frank Bainimarama and Fiji First government, they brag about the fact that we are exporting $100 million worth of agricultural produce. But they're not telling the people of this country that we are importing about $800 million worth of food. And so, they talk in the last 15, 16 years. Actually, they forgot about agriculture. All the economic, agenda and economic policy, Bill knows in Parliament. We only talk about Fiji Airways and tourism and all that. And suddenly when the COVID hit us, then they said, oh, no, we need to look at agriculture. Then, we saw all these little programs, the Minister for Agriculture running around giving seeds. But then when the tourism industry bounced back, they forgot about agriculture again. So we want to ensure that, we look at our supply chains. We should focus on, organic, food. We need to look at what our, partners want imported from us, and then link income to land leases, to landowner participation, to tenants. Because once you have an integrated approach to agriculture, there is no planning in agriculture. They did away with planning. There is no planning office in this country. So nothing is integrated, nothing is being discussed. And so it's all talk and no policy, no plan. We have to, the next government will have a big, huge task to integrate, these good policies. There are things about, farmers are talking about the banning of paraquat, for example. No discussion with the farmers. No discussion on the climatic conditions, weather conditions, because the pesticide or the thing that they can use now doesn't work in this climate, doesn't work in the weather. And they just made a policy because somebody told them that this would, and the argument that they use was, oh, paraquat is killing a lot of people. People are using it to commit suicide. Look at other avenues to protect that. Make laws, not just, so this is what they have done. They've actually completely destroyed the agriculture sector, let alone, the sugar industry. So we need to come back, bring the participation, have maybe a summit of landowners, tenants, government, to see how we can go there.
Mr. Chaudhry.
Thank you, Vijay. Land lying idle is of no use to anybody. Most of all, to its owners. It is an economic asset, and it must be put to use to fetch an economic return. Now, we have a situation in this country where about 95% of the land is owned by one community. The other communities, which constitute maybe 37-38% of the population,
31.
Including the other minority communities, yes, have a concern about accessibility of land as far as they're concerned. They're looking well into the future. Now, for the Indian community, particularly in the Fijian community, those whose leases were not renewed, and there were thousands of them, they had to move out of the land and come and settle here in the cities and towns. It's an acute problem, housing problem it has created, informal settlements and all that. Now, there are thousands of them who are living in these informal settlements without any title to land. Fiji first promised them so many times in this squatter settlement that they will issue them leases and all that. This hasn't happened. So it's a real worry for them because they do not have any land for housing. Land for housing is a constitutional right, but on the ground, nothing of that sort is happening. So I think we must address the concerns of other communities on accessibility to land, and this is very important indeed. This is also tied to our economy, promoting agriculture. You can't promote agriculture without secure tenancy and long-term leases. So this needs really a very serious consideration.
Mr. Rabuka, what's the People's Alliance plan?
Equitable return.
Equitable return and more land available, Itoke land available for agriculture?
I think we can acquire as much land as we need as long as we promise the landowners equitable return.
You believe you have the confidence to be able to convince the landowners?
Yes.
Mr. Gavoka.
Vijay, with the landowners, there is a great sense of anxiety on their land. I know people are saying that your land is secure under the 2013 Constitution, but ownership without control is no ownership. We've said this many times. I think we will remove the sense of anxiety with the landowners, and they themselves don't want to see their land lying idle. They want to use it. They want to have some return on their land. The TLTB has been greatly weakened in many ways. Land has been taken out of the jurisdiction of the TLTB and taken to the land use unit. We understand the principles behind the land use unit, but it can be handled within the TLTB. The cases of tweaking some of the provisions in the original TLTB have led to the sense of anxiety with the landowners. Bill 17, no consultation, came through as a consequence of bill, if I remember correctly.
Budget amendment bill. A budget amendment.
Yeah, it came as part of the budget, and it was done within that week.
Yeah.
And it had huge implications. And we must reassure the landowners that their land is safe.
And we're taken to the police for opposing the bill.
Absolutely. I was taken to the police for questioning that their land is safe.
We were.
All of us.
And that on that basis, there's going to be a more support on their part to allow the farmers to farm. As I indicated earlier, we will pay premiums, about $30 million a year, for any new leases or any renewal of leases. And there's a huge big landowner in Nandi Niako who's now taking this to his tenants and say, look, SODELPA will do this for you. The landowner is happy that he's going to get the premium and encouraging his people to farm. We talk about land being fundamental to agriculture. That's the way to do it. Help pay the premium so that the farms continue to flourish, and help agriculture.
Thank you.
That's where we are on the one, Vijay.
Thank you very much. I'll talk about indigenous rights and culture, including the Great Council of Chiefs issue, because that has become a contentious issue in this election. The Fiji First Leader has said in the campaign meetings it will bring back racial discrimination, that Mr. Rabuka, you are trying to bring that back, and it will not bring anything back for the Itoke. It has not been around for a whole number of years and it's not needed. What's your comments on that?
I think he has not really understood the cultural setup, the cultural mindset of the indigenous people. There are a lot of government problems, government issues that can be addressed when you address it properly with the Great Council of Chiefs. They are a calming effect in times of turbulent discussions, particularly on indigenous resource-based development. The days are gone of our looking down on our chiefs' educational levels. They are well-trained chiefs now. They understand the national problems. They even understand well the international demand on Fiji to be a successful participant in international affairs. And I'm sure that with their blessings, a lot of the land issues that we now face, a lot of the land that we need to have access to for our national development will be available.
What about Mr. Bainimarama's comments that it will bring back racial discrimination?
I think, who are we discriminating against? I think the chiefs are prepared to bend over backward to accommodate the other races. Is that discrimination?
Mr. Chaudhry.
On the question of GCC, we have said that this is an institution of the indigenous people. It is an institution of long standing, and it plays an advisory role to the government of the day on issues affecting the indigenous community, particularly if a legislation is proposed which will impact on the indigenous community, then the GCC is to be consulted. This is an institution which they must decide whether they want or they don't want. It's not for the government to impose its will and remove it or abolish it. And that's our position on that.
Mr. Gavoka.
Vijay, in the Itoke structure, there is the Tikina Council, there is the Village Council, Tikina Council, Provincial Council, and at the pinnacle is the GCC, the Council of Chiefs. So all these things, go through the process, a very, very deliberate, very well-structured process. And by the time it reaches the pinnacle and the approval is given on a certain issue, it cascades down to the entire community and is well accepted. That's what we need. I can tell you, my paramount chiefs, him and I were the same age, and I went further in school. He dropped out, but in that kind of setup, with the kind of paramount chiefs, Vijay, there were times when I would talk to him and I'm saying, he's way beyond me in some of the wisdom that he showed me. I mean, that is kind of, inbred in chiefs. They are a huge part of Fiji. And I'm sure the two leaders who have sat in the office of Prime Minister have seen how effective they could be even in national affairs, to calm things down and with cool heads and they are the chiefs of everyone. There was a time when they were the chiefs of everyone in this country. They were accepted as such. But for us going forward, the GCC, the Great Council of Chiefs, will be focused on Itoke affairs, protection of resources and the likes.
Professor Prasad, what is NFP's position?
Well, first of all, Vijay, let me say that the hypocrisy that comes out from Frank Bainimarama and his government on the issue of indigenous bodies. This is a man who forgot that when he did the coup, the GCC actually opposed the coup in 2006. I'm wondering, if the GCC had supported his coup, what would he be saying about the GCC today? It's an indigenous body, and I agree with Mr. Chaudhry. It's for the indigenous people to decide. It's for them to decide. It's not, and the other hypocrisy is this, of this government. We have a Ministry of Itoke Affairs. He's taken over that government. Frank Bainimarama is a minister. Taken over, he is appointing the Turangani Koros. He is appointing the chairman of the provincial councils. He has destroyed democracy in that organization which existed. So the only reason why he's saying this, Vijay, is to play to the Indo-Fijian gallery in this election. Rabuka is going to come back, bring the GCC, bring the Golingoli bill. They're going around, scaring into little groups and threatening our people, creating this fear that somehow, if the indigenous people or leaders talk about the GCC, and Mr. Chaudhry is absolutely right, that it is an indigenous body and it is for the indigenous people, what form they want to bring. And I know Mr. Rabuka talked about. And the other point that Mr. Rabuka made, which is a very pertinent point, is that we, Indo-Fijians have lived in this country for 143 years. We've had land issues. We've negotiated ALTA. We've negotiated land leases over the last so many years. Frank Bainimarama has been the Prime Minister for 16 years, Chairman of the TLTV, a lot of land issues, a lot of issues about premiums. I raised this in Parliament. Why didn't he solve it? Because nobody believes him. In the people who control the land, own the land, do not believe Frank Bainimarama. And I think Mr. Rabuka is right, that when we build a trust, when we work together, we would be able to solve the land leases in this problem in a very short period of time. And I know we're going to talk about housing, how land should be made available to resolve the squatter settlements. All that can be done. And all Frank Bainimarama and his government have been promising or saying, he has been lying to the squatters, the informal settlers in this country about what they're going to do.
Mr. Narube.
Yeah, it's contradicting the aims of national unity and stability. I mean, who is the government that goes against the wishes of the people? This is over 60% of our population are indigenous Fijians. They value their chiefly system. They want to bring back the Great Council of Chiefs. So who is going to stand in judgment of their opinion? And I think this is where basically the fundamental issues of this government. It thinks that it can rule by itself and dictate to those. So we'll bring back the Great Council of Chiefs. We'll change their terms of reference with consultation to focus also more on economic development in their province.
Very specific answers. Next question on housing. What will you do? People are watching, they want to know. Mr. Chaudhry.
Housing is a big problem, particularly for lower paid and middle income people here. We propose to solve this problem by providing subsidized housing to this group of people under a scheme which will be administered by the Housing Authority. Homes will be provided to these people on low and middle incomes at a fixed price, and that we have fixed at $65,000. The weekly rental for that would be $65 as well. FNPF will be used to give them the deposit for this housing, and it will be a self-revolving scheme. Once it takes off, after that it will be self-financing and funded entirely by local sources. We have to do this. We have to subsidize this housing because the housing market here is out of kilter. This market was distorted and spoiled some time back when we got an influx of foreigners coming in here and buying land at exorbitant prices that set the whole housing market out of tune with the incomes of our people here. So we have to fix that. We have to realign the housing market. And this is the only way we see that we can bring down the values, exaggerated, inflated values, which people have to pay now for even most basic homes.
Professor Prasad, a lot of young people are watching. They want to know what is your policy on housing. What will you do? What will NFP do?
The first thing we will do, Vijay, and Mr. Rabuka talked about it, is to open up more land. Because you can talk about housing, you can talk about subsidy, you can talk about providing people with homes. But if the land is not available, I think the problem that this government has created over the last 15 or 16 years, no new land developments have taken place. And those that have taken place have been gobbled up by people who can't afford, higher prices. You look at what happened in Tandiruwa. You look at what was being talked about in Waila City. So when we get into government, first of all, we would look at all these regulations that they have. I mean, if you look at Suvarnasuri area, you have land on the other side of the main road. You have land on the right side of the road if you're traveling to Nasori. And this government in the last 15 years has done nothing. We don't even know the extent of the mess. The water shortages that we have reflects the fact that there's so many people who have moved into the Suvarnasori area, and even that is not enough. So even if you build houses, where the people are living now, you can't provide them with water and electricity. That is going to be another problem. So I think our focus in the first 6 months would be to get into negotiations with landowners. If it is a freehold, I know there are freehold land as well. If you go, to places like Savani and other areas, which is not far away from Suva, which is not far away from Nasori. These land can be opened up through negotiation, through government funding, and have a plan for people for affordable and proper housing.
Mr. Rabuka.
Acquisition of land, equitable return to the landowners, and now we have a market. We have differences of the land that's available. What would the landowner say if the freeholder gets so much for his 100 acres and go to the Tokay landowners, and we also need the 100 acres from them, and how much are we going to say to them? If the freeholder says, I'll give you this for so many million, would the traditional landowners, the indigenous people, be given that amount? Now you can compare land. There is the same area offered by the Matakali, the same area offered by the freeholder. That's where you have to exercise the negotiation, and for the Tokay landowner, he'll be looking at why is he getting so many million and we're getting so many dollars per 6 months.
Mr. Gavoka.
Vijay, I grew up in housing authority in Lautoka back in the 60s.
I would want to specific answers because it's quick background.
But I'm just going to ask the question, Vijay. What happened to housing authority in the way it was set up then? If it had grown at that level back in the 60s, we would have homes for almost everyone in Fiji today, Vijay. But very quickly, for us, there's quite a comprehensive list of things that they want to do under housing. But one that I want to touch on quickly is that engaging landowners in policy review for housing purposes. And we set aside a budget of $300,000 there, Vijay. Getting the landowners to make the land available. There are too many informal arrangements in the Suvarnasori corridor. We want to formalize that. We want to do that properly. People are living with a sense of anxiety, that there is no security to their homes, and then the return to the landowner is not also there. So that to us would be an immediate step we would take to make land available for housing.
Mr. Narube.
Yes, I think this government has not prioritized housing. It only spends about $15 million a year on housing. So it is a very low priority. We lift the priorities of housing. It's one of our 5 priorities. There are different kinds of houses, types of houses. You have the lowest one, which is of course the informal settlement. Then you have the PRB, then you have the housing authority. Those are the houses we're going to target, and we're going to increase the budget allocation for this housing from $15 million a year to $100 million. And we estimate that we'll build around 1,000 homes in a year. That is our solution.
Thank you, Mr. Narube. We'll be back after this break.
What I did in 2006 is to clean up the mess in the study.
When there has been Itoke leadership, everybody has been embraced.
He cannot stomach the fact that he is not in government.
You said that you couldn't pay out bonuses, but this shows an increase in board directors' fees.
You are wanting to lead the country, not me. I'm asking you the question again, back to corporal punishment. Right. What's your stand on it?
Fiji First cannot intervene into a personal matter.
Absolutely, you can for small businesses.
I was very surprised when he came out with that statement that I would conduct a coup if I lose. Not
Hand
me.
on your heart.
It's him.
No, you're a joke.
No, you are a joke.
You're a joke.
You're a joke. Don't bring that up. We don't.
No, I gotta bring it up. You were commander.
But yes,
Every military officer and serviceman at the time was under your
you've
command.
forgotten you trained them.
Savenaca. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk. I am Vijay Narayan.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan. Sponsored by Salt and Pepper Home Decor. Living in high quality. Watch it live on the Fiji Village Facebook page. Download the all-new Fiji Village app. Get the latest news direct to your mobile. Get the latest sports updates from our scoreboards online. Navigate easily through our categories. Watch videos from Straight Talk interviews, local music videos, sports and many more. You can now easily listen to your favorite radio stations from your phone. Download the all-new Fiji Village app right now.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Tonight, we don't have the Fiji First leader in the house. We sent invites from early November. No response was received. We have the Fiji Labour Party, National Federation Party, People's Alliance, SODELPA and Unity Fiji here to debate on national issues before we finish off. Of course, campaign blackout period starts at midnight tonight. Education is a big issue and continues to be something that a lot of people are grappling with. TELS loans, quite hard to pay. Some people have $30,000 in loans in TELS and they have no jobs for quite some time. They are wondering, what will the political parties offer? It's being stated by the Fiji First that a carrot is being dangled in the form of for giving TELS loans or giving scholarships. Mr. Rabuka, you've been quoted heavily or misquoted heavily by some. I will start with Professor Prasad on TELS loans, toppers, and the standard of education. What's your message to the people out there?
Let me start with your last part, the standard of education. This is a government which has engaged in all kinds of haphazard reforms since 2006. They actually promised in 2014 to set up an education commission. The Minister for Education then, Mahendra, announced it. And then somebody reminded him that it was part of the NFP's manifesto and we never heard about it after that. So what we are saying is some of the policies that they implemented, some of the policies they announced. For example, they destroyed the technical education in this country. Technical education, vocational education was going very well in schools. There was a pathway, going into FNTC and all that. They tried to set up technical colleges. They spent millions of dollars, collapsed. They said, okay, FNU will run, that collapsed. Now, some committed people have tried to set up a Pacific Polytech and run. On TELS, Vijay, one of the propaganda of this government is that never in the history, it appears that it only started when Frank and Ayaz were born into politics. I studied on scholarship. I went through a remission of fees program. Free education was brought right up to Form 4 by Mr. Rabuka when he was Prime Minister. Is that correct? Yeah. These guys came in and had 5 and 6 and 7. An improvement, we acknowledge that. We used to have loan scheme, we used to have scholarships, we used to have all of that. TELS is not a bad idea, having loan and scholarship. What they did, they abolished all the scholarships. They had this top of the scholarship, 800 only. So students coming out from poor background, having 280 or 300 marks in, say, from Bua College, would miss out on a scholarship, get landed with a $30,000 or $40,000 loan, and then when they get out of the university, they don't have good jobs. Even if they get the jobs, it's like very low paying. They can't pay. So it's been and all the solutions that Ayaz has offered is really favoring the rich. He said, if you pay 50% upfront, you get the remission of other 50%. Who is going to pay that? People who have parental income, which is good. So ideally, and I know some political parties have offered that they will do away with the debt. That's the ideal. We haven't said that, but that is something that when we get into government, we don't know the extent of the mess. We don't know the extent of the finance. So we want to look at it in a holistic manner and ensure, but let me assure all those students and parents, this rumor, this malicious lie, this fear that's been created, that TELS will be gone, race-based scholarship will come, that's not going to happen as long as I am going to be in government. And our partners have understood that, Mr. Rabuka has clarified that we will have a scholarship which will ensure that it's not ethnically based, it's not race-based, it's based on merit, it's based on all students who qualify to go to the university.
Mr. Rabuka.
Well, I agree with all those things. We have positively stated that we will forgive the TELS debts outstanding to the students who have completed. Those who are into the tertiary education program will continue without having to have the rest on loan, and we'll forgive whatever they have built up. On the scholarship based on merit, we will need to, that was when we considered having the FAB and multi-ethnic backup scholarships because of the quality of the passes. It's not really based on academic capabilities of the children. A lot of it depends on the location of the schools and the facilities available in those rural schools. And the facilities dictate a lot to the quality of teachers that go out, the resources available to the schools and the committees to make the student in the rural areas capable of scoring the same marks as those that have computers in their schools, have electricity to study in the evening, and we have now we have problems in rural and urban areas of running water. So it used to be quite remarkable. Now the problem of water, even electricity, is prevalent in both urban and rural, but more so in the rural areas. Our facilities are not good, so the facilities available for the child to score good marks at the university entrance form are hampered.
Mr. Gavoka.
Thank you, Vijay. Vijay, I've been very blessed that in my team are some very highly qualified and experienced educators, and they have been very helpful in formulating our policies on education, which is primarily the free tertiary education for everyone. You get an offer from any institution, you go in for free. And additional to that, we will forgive the TELS loans. Vijay, I want to share this with you. The way it is now, in the Itoke community, topos is almost like a dirty word. Because we believe that not many of our youth qualify for topos, and when we ask for a breakdown on who gets topos, we don't get it. So, yeah, so there's a huge suspicion in there that toppers is weighted against us. But that is why it's good just to give everyone the opportunity to go to university. You get an offer, go in for free. On TELS, we'll forgive it. It's a book entry, debit, credit, out it goes. And there'll be no bonding. We will not bond any student except for medical professionals. We will bond them as they are today for obvious reasons, the time they train and the internship and all that. But for all our young people, you get educated in Fiji, you can go anywhere, the world is your oyster.
Mr. Narube.
Yeah, education, as we all know, is priority for many. As we have talked about poverty, that's one of the instruments to get out of poverty. We talk about women, that again is through education. So it is a priority for everyone. The current scholarship scheme favors the rich. Simple. Simple. And we want to equalize the opportunities of education to everyone. Our policy, though, is inclusive. It's will do away with toppers and tails and have only one scholarship. And if you have a place, an offer of a place at a tertiary institution, that is it. That is the condition. So we'll forgive tails debt because obviously it's a big burden to us. We mentioned this in 2018. So this was 4 years ago. So we're mentioning it again this time around.
Mr. Chaudhry.
On the standard of education, we're all worried about the declining standard of education in the country. And we are proposing to appoint an education commission to review our entire education system, including improving the curriculum. The last commission was appointed by the Labour government in 1999. Since then, we've had nothing. So it's time for another commission, and this is the way to go in terms of catching up on our education. On TELS, we have promised to reduce TELS by 50% for those workers who complete courses in the prescribed term. We will give further concessions to those students who qualify or take courses and graduate on those courses which will be of national interest. We will also examine the TELS debt of students who are genuinely unable to pay. We cannot carry these debts in perpetuity. At some point in time they have to go. So these will be considered, and I agree that this is a huge problem. We have something like 700 million almost that our students are owing. They must be the biggest debtors to the government of the day. So we have to deal with this, and I think we can all put our heads together to see what is the best solution for this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhry. We'll now go to questions where we have gathered everything the Fiji First Leader has said about some of you gentlemen. Starting with you, Mr. Chaudhry. He says that it's time for you to retire. The other issues that he said is that you have some bhajaniyas in your team, and he questions their capability on whether they can look into complex issues in Parliament. Some comments that were made in Tavua. What's your comments on that?
Well, I think I'm in better health and shape than the Prime Minister himself. I have my original heart. It has not been operated on. I don't have any other serious problems. That is answering him on that. Now, as far as bhajaniyas are concerned, we've already responded to that. I think he has picked that from the Attorney General. So we've already answered that. And but look at him. You know, he's a Prime Minister, a national leader. And he is trying to ridicule and insult other leaders of political parties. With that kind of mentality, do the people of Fiji seriously think that he should return as Prime Minister? No. So I think it's for him to retire now. He's had his 16 years. He's created a huge mess for the country, which we will have to clean up. And we can do that. So my advice to
I'll rephrase that. That was said by Ayaz Syed Kayum, General Secretary, specifically about the bhajaniya comment.
Well, the bhajaniya that he was talking about is a university graduate. And he is a business executive, and he also runs a small business of his own. He sings bhajans during his spare time. And he's assisted charitable organizations by, singing bhajans to raise funds for people in need. Now, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with that? And by extension, what he's doing is actually insulting the entire Hindu community.
Yep.
The entire Hindu community. Well, there you are.
Professor Prasad, you've been described as a person holding Mr. Rabuka's tail. In many campaign meetings, it's been said. What's your comments?
Well, I think the two of them probably know where each other's tails are, and they've been holding each other's tails for 16 years. We don't know who is the Prime Minister. I think I said in Parliament that Ayaz is the de facto Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister doesn't even know that he's not the Prime Minister. As far as, Mr. Chaudhry is right. These two people, are getting personal because they have nothing else to talk about. His reference to Mr. Chaudhry, Bani Marama is being ageist. He's insulting the older people in this country, their wisdom and their ability to do things. So that's the first thing. Ayaz's reference to Bhajaniyas and Bani Marama's reference to Talatalas, he said Talatalas will join him in the hell of somewhere. We have two Bhajaniyas in our list, Vijay. One is got a master's degree, he was in the government planning office. One is considered to be the king of bhajans in this country, Mr. Shivdayal. He was a vice principal. He's an accomplished businessman. And I agree with Mr. Chaudhry. He has insulted the entire group of people, and in the Hindu culture, Hindu religion, bhajans, bhajaniyas are very important people. I've seen people actually go and touch Shivdayal's feet. They revere him, and for Ayaz to come out and say that bhajaniyas don't have the awqat. Awqat means you don't have the capability. This is, it's quite insulting, and no right-thinking leader, in government would ever make that kind of, insulting comment. It's like him telling the Indo-Fijians that, you're committing treachery. He called them Gaddar. Gaddar is a really, serious traitor. Way of traitor and, ridiculing a person's, self-esteem. And he's saying, if you vote for Fiji first, and if you don't vote for Fiji first, and if you vote for NFP, you are a Gaddar, you are committing treachery. This is what he's telling. So I think the people are smarter than him. He's used all kinds of personal attacks on me. I'm not bothered about that. My focus is to get into government and to deliver for the people of this country. And we've been focusing on policies. He has copied many of the policies that I've been offering, for the last 8 years. So we have a track record. They don't have a track record. Their track record is broken. Broken economy, broken, health services, everything else that you can think of. So that's their record, Vijay.
Mr. Rabuka, you have been called a snake more than once by Mr. Bani Marama. You have been called a racist, and that you remain a racist. Mr. Said Kayume said you have apologized many times, maybe because you don't believe your own apology for what you've done. What do you have to say to the people?
First of all, the snake issue, Jesus himself said something about a snake. You got to be as wise as a snake and gentle as a dove. So maybe he was looking at that, the wisdom in the snake. The other, what was the second one?
Ayaz Karim says that you still continue to apologize. It means that
I
maybe you don't
apologize
mean.
because I believe in seeking forgiveness from those. Some because they some continue to condemn me for 87. So I do not know who heard me the last time I apologized and who has not. And when I do apologize, I hope those that were having a go at me in the social media would be there and hear me say it. Maybe they do not believe it. I am sincere in seeking forgiveness, in apologizing to the people I had hurt, and those that criticized me for the frequency of my apologies probably have never apologized and never realized the relief you get from apologizing. And And the other one was
The other one that you were still a racist. You remain a racist.
I'm proud, it's okay. And I respect everybody who's proud of their own ethnicity. We had a very good address last night from one of the National Federation Party candidates who openly said, I'm proud, and mentioned his race and ethnicity. And I have a lot of respect for those. And we cannot really get racism when you use race as when you weaponize race, then that becomes racism. I believe accepting race is a fact of life, and the challenges of being different, boy, we'll have a great country.
Mr. Gavoka, this is not about Mr. Bainimarama, but there is something else that's also going on as we speak, and it's in relation to a SODELPA letter that was sent, and within that there was a request for deregistration of the People's Alliance. Some public comments have been made. Linda Tambuya came out and said SODELPA is a haunted house. Your General Secretary says Linda Tambuya left with the horrors in the house. And the question that has been arising is where does SODELPA stand? And also Linda Tambuya said last night that the bottom line is that a vote for SODELPA is a vote for the Fiji first. Mr. Gavoka,
Vijay, let me state very emphatically that we are not talking to anyone on coalition, not talking to Fiji first, or anyone for that matter. We are committed to winning the elections outright, and the indications are that we are heading in that direction. The pre-polling have indicated that we are doing okay. So let me state that, repeat that. We are not talking to anyone about coalition. We will do this outright. We highlighted some issues relating to People's Alliance Manifesto. I don't think there was any mention there of deregistering the party. It was highlighting certain things that they were not in keeping with 1164C. The concern being that the way we see it is that a manifesto is a contract between the party and the people, and we felt that it had to be above board and had to be taken very seriously. We felt that in that area we needed to highlight this to ensure that we all keep within the laws relating to the Electoral Act 2014.
Unity Fiji, Mr. Narube, comments have been made that you will not make the 5% threshold. Other comments been made that Unity Fiji is wasting its time. What do you have to say to the people?
Quite negative to both. I think we will more than make the threshold. The support is there. They like our messages and the new solutions to very old problems. So that is not correct at all. But this name calling is a camouflage for actually their performance. Remove the name calling. Just look at their performance. And what is their performance? The performance is terrible. It's the most terrible one in the history of this country. There is poverty at the highest rate. We estimate it to be 40%. The cost of living is through the roof. Jobs are hard to find, particularly with the youth. The other resource-based industries are in a shambles. And what about the abuse of human rights? Has anybody started to talk about that? The abuse of human rights, the kind of violence that they have done in the past. I think we should also talk about that. So the performance is there. And people don't get blindsided by any of this name calling. It's not what we should be talking about. Talk about performance, bring the data and indicators. To me, they are just not fit to govern.
There's a last video, one of the last videos by Fiji First leader that was released today, and in his final statement he made comments about specific leaders. And this is the last question in relation to the Fiji First leader, because it was put out publicly. In that video, he said, Sitiveni Rabuka is leading the same team he led to defeat in the last election. He is simply wearing a new uniform. Make no mistake. He's after the same thing he was in 1987. Power. Power for him and power for his business friends. You're right to respond there, Mr. Rabuka.
Well, I have power in my own self. I do not need any position. I have left my own record. His own record is a record or track record of havoc and damaged infrastructure and all negative signs of leadership, if we can call it that. I think he's lost it. He doesn't even know what the meaning of the words he has said. And it is sad to see somebody who is called a national leader go to that level. He is not a leader. He was never a leader. And I'm only sad that his appointment to be commander was done in a very devious way.
Weren't you part of it?
I was government. I was prime minister. That's why I say devious.
You nominated his name?
No.
Who did?
That is normally done by the commander and approved by cabinet or the minister. So the minister means minister in cabinet. It was not brought to cabinet before it was approved.
So who did?
That's not part of your questions.
I'm asking you.
It was done by the minister responsible directly to the president and then back to cabinet.
So there was Colonel Paul Manueli?
Yes.
Colonel Paul Manueli to the president?
Correct.
You agreed to it?
No, it was already agreed.
No say from the Prime Minister?
No say from the Prime Minister or cabinet.
Thank you. Professor Prasad, you got a mention in that last statement as well, and this is actual quote, Biman is a yes man who does not have a common sense of courage to stand up to his new master Rabuka, no matter what he threatens the country with. Your comments?
Well, again, I agree with Mr. Rabuka. Frank Bainimarama is a man who came into power through the barrel of the gun, through conducting a coup, through imposing his own constitution, and remaining there under his own draconian laws and determining his own salary through a decree before the parliament. So we have a prime minister, as I said earlier, who doesn't know whether he is the actual prime minister. I believe that the de facto prime minister is Ayah Sayed Qayyum. This man is hanging on to him. I've seen his performance in Parliament. He really has no idea about any portfolio, including the Ministry of Youth OK Affairs. And so he talks about other people. I mean, I came into politics not to save myself. I can stand on my own. Mr. Rabuka knows that. And so really, I mean, it's quite strange that here is a man, who talks about, being a leader, and yet, engages in this kind of gutter level, personal attacks. I mean, he's attacked my wife, twice. I have never attacked anybody's family. I know, when you are in politics, the family is always under, I mean, the kind of statement that he's made. So I don't give any credence to this kind of cheap personal attacks from a prime minister who doesn't even know whether he's the actual prime minister.
Okay, the other three party leaders, this is all he said about other parties and actual quotes. The other parties are dead wood, a chorus of hollow plans and empty promises from aging relics who should have retired 20 years ago.
Who wrote that?
All of them are failed leaders and none of them can be trusted.
Who wrote that for him?
That's an important question you can ask maybe when you meet him next. But Mr. Chaudhry.
Well, this man's propensity for gutter level politics amazes me. And I don't want to stoop to his level.
Don't.
Although it's very provocative.
I'm just giving you the right to respond.
Well, you see me here, alert as ever, answering your questions.
You heard you.
I ran the government for 12 months. I was entitled to have it back. He as commander didn't give it back to me. Right? So I'm here. And I'm here to stay. I don't run away from problems, as you know, and as everybody else knows. So I'll just ignore these kind of things, and I'll keep on focusing. I love Fiji. This is my country. That's why I've continued in politics, despite, being, of course, going through a lot of problems, including being held hostage for 56 days. We've suffered a lot. But nonetheless, any sacrifice is worth, for Fiji, any sacrifice is worth.
Mr. Chaudhry, you're sitting across the table from Mr. Rabuka, of course, 87. There's a history there. Between the two of you, have you spoken about it and have you moved on?
I have moved on. I shook his hands outside the president's office when he won the election in 99, congratulated him, and came out.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Rabuka did say that to me, and he has apologized to the people for the event of 1987. So it's okay with me. It's okay with me. It's a long time ago. I can't be carrying it with me all the time.
Mr. Gavoka, you've been part of this. The other parties describe a dead wood.
Vijay, we have campaigned primarily on policies that's part of a process that started with SDL back in 2001. And we're upholding that legacy that we were given by our predecessors at the time. And I have served for 8 years in Parliament, and I've sat across the side of the aisle, watching how things are happening across the aisle. And we can do a much better job than what is happening across the aisle from us. We have a party that encourages dialogue, and we are Fiji. We are a very democratic party. We have our moments, but that is part and parcel of democracy. And that gives us the strength to be in the driver's seat and sit at the other side of the house and do a much better job than what we have seen over the last 8 years in that August House and Parliament.
Mr. Narube, part of that list too, the other parties, dead wood, aging relics, should have retired 20 years ago. What's your comments?
Okay, I think if you're in a glass house, don't throw stones. And I think he needs to really look at his profile. What is his profile? What has he done? What is his qualification? Where did he attend school? So those are the kind of things we should throw back at him. If you're labeling people like that, you better be careful that you have a profile that even better than what people that you are criticizing. So I throw that back to him. Show us your profile. I believe he was in Form 4 only in education. And what other things that he has achieved before he could this country in 2006. And that brings me to a very important question of military coups. You know, that's the elephant in the room that we don't address. I think we should address it, and Unity Fiji has addressed it specifically in its manifesto. We are forming a National Security Commission, which will take in all the consultations on anything possible to stop this coup culture that we have. If we don't, these things tend to repeat themselves. So that's my answer to his labeling. I think I would throw a label back at him. He's a puppet leader.
Final question and your messages to the people. Of course, voter turnout is a big issue for Wednesday. You have this final message. 5% threshold is another one. Of course, if party does not meet that 5%, they will not be part of Parliament and will discontinue the journey right from after the votes are counted, and if they do not make the 5%. So your message, and Mr. Chaudhry, if you can also confirm, based on a message to the people and the turnout, on which parties you are willing to work with that are currently contesting the elections.
My message to the people, first message is please do come and vote on the 14th. We all want a change. This is the vibes I've been getting from the people wherever I've gone. Nobody spoke about keeping Fiji first in government. They all want them out. So if you want them out, then please do come and vote them out. That's the first message that I give. I think on the question of who am I prepared to work with, I think this will be discussed when the results are known, and definitely not with Fiji first. That I can assure you that we will not be willing to work with Fiji first. There are 4 other parties here, and of course, forming coalitions and forming a government are matters for negotiation. We will have to sit down and talk about the policies and to what extent each other can be accommodated in such a situation. So at the moment, yes, the country cannot be without a government. If a situation comes where no single party has the majority to run the government by itself, then a coalition will become imminent and necessary, and we will then deal with this issue.
So you're saying anyone except Fiji first?
Yes, based on negotiations and alignment of policies.
Mr. Rabuka.
Vijay, to our people, we believe some 70% have voted in the pre-polls from the 5th to the 9th. Some of us have expressed disappointment as to why we did not, whether the turnout was not higher than that. There may be reasons that we will need to look into. But for the rest of us, please come out and vote on the 14th, Wednesday. This is the only opportunity on that day for you to decide how you want to be governed over the next 4 years. That is that very, I always call it a moment of truth. When you in the exclusive booth to make up your mind how you want to be governed. It's quite a huge undertaking, and one that you should undertake living in a democracy. For SODELPA, we're happy with the way things are tracking. We are committed to winning outright to form the next government. We are not talking to anyone about coalition. An outright win is what we are expecting after the 14th of December. Thank you.
Professor Prasad.
Well, thank you, Vijay. Let me say to the people of Fiji that the reign of the Fiji First government is ending on the 14th of December, after you have casted your votes. That is the message we are getting very clearly from the people of this country throughout our campaign. I think Fiji is at a critical juncture. We have a choice between continuing with the decline, continuing with the disastrous medical services, disastrous economy, disastrous imposition and crippling debt. We have the cost of living hitting the roof, people are struggling to make ends meet. And on the other hand, you have a choice of a government which is prepared to address, to look after the vulnerable and work with the people. We in the National Federation Party, we have forged a post-election partnership with the People's Alliance Party, and we believe that we have good policies. I acknowledge there are some good policies from other parties, leaders who are here, and we wish them well as well. But one last thing that I want to say, Vijay, to the people when they go to the polls. We have this idea of blackout, and we know that in the last election there was a lot of misinformation, fear created during that period. And I want to give this example. There was this fake news that if Mr. Rabuka came into power, that the Diwali holiday will be taken away by him. And there are others. So I'm saying to the people of Fiji that the two-man government, the two-man rule, and especially the fear-mongering that has been created by Frank Bainimarama and Ayaz Sayed Kayum, there will be more during the blackout by their supporters, by their fakers. Please don't believe those. Look at what we have said throughout our campaign. Look at our policies and don't believe the misinformation. What we are saying is go to the polls, get your friends, families on Wednesday and vote them out and usher in a new government after the 14th of December. Thank you.
Mr. Narube.
Yeah, I think we'll have a blessed Christmas this year. We'll get rid of this tyranny, this oppressive regime. And I think that's where we should vote for in this election. They have done damage to us. We don't know the depth of the wounds that they have created. We'll find out when we get there. But all indicators, whatever you indicate, the economic performance and even the abuse of power, corruption, and so forth are all there to see. Please don't listen to propaganda that they throw out. It's just propaganda. Please look at the facts of their performance, the indicators of their performance, and that's where the truth lies. And we should find the truth. And we in Unity Fiji have stated quite openly many months ago that we'll work with other parties except Fiji First. So that's been very clear to us, because I came in here to politics to remove Fiji First, and I'm quite committed to that. In terms of our threshold, don't listen to people that are telling you that we won't make the threshold. That's their only defense as we eat into their voters. So we will be much above the threshold. We hope that we'll be up there with the number of seats in Parliament after the election.
So the three gentlemen here saying anyone except Fiji First. Mr. Gavoka, the earlier one you had said in that 48 hours negotiation time anything can happen. You still stand by that?
Vijay, we are committed to winning this outright.
What if that doesn't happen?
It's not in our thinking right now. It's not. You're not even contemplating that, Vijay. We're going to win this outright.
No options after that if you don't make the 28?
We are very comfortable with where we are, and we'll get over the threshold of 28 seats.
So no thinking of if you have to, as other leaders have said.
No thinking of that, Vijay. 28 seats is our minimum.
Mr. Rabuka.
Well, I think everybody here, the worthy party leader, would say that we all each aspiring for the 28 seats. But I understand the difficulties with my own leadership and my own profile in politics in Fiji. And although my party is a multiracial party, I understand the difficulties that some of our brothers, citizens have in coming directly to work with me. And that inspired the cooperation with the National Federation Party, and we signed that memorandum of understanding. Those who are uncomfortable coming all the way to join my party would be more comfortable working with the National Federation Party. And we are committed to forming a post-election government, and the door is still open to the other, my colleagues, party leaders here, if they would like to consider us. What I'd like to tell the people of Fiji is to go on Wednesday and vote. And I'm the last speaker here, so I'm going to say, vote for me. If you don't vote for me, vote for the National Federation Party. Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
That's the show for tonight, and that's the leaders' debate for 2022 general elections. As we stated earlier, that invites were sent from early November. Fiji First Leader, there was no response received. We kept a chair to show you that we had him at the table, and unfortunately we did not get any response. So, as we've said, 693,915 registered voters in these elections. After the pre-poll, we're about 70%, and that's the provisional voter turnout at the moment. We're still waiting for the confirmed voter turnout. Pre-poll voter turnout in 2018 elections was 64%. So we're trying to get the full figures to find out how many actually voted during this pre-poll period. Of course, if you missed out, you cannot come and vote on December 14th because you were allocated to vote on the pre-poll, allocated times and allocated dates. That means around 606,092 people are listed to vote on Wednesday, December 14th. Voting starts at 7:30 in the morning and finishes at 6 p.m. Please text 1500 if you want to find out your actual polling station. If you've got a blue card, it should be listed on your card. If you have a green card, don't think that you cannot vote. You are already a registered voter. You can go and with a valid ID or any sort of ID, they can conduct a search and you can vote, even if you don't have a blue card. Ensure, go out and vote, because that is the push from everyone to ensure you practice that democratic right come Wednesday. Have a good night. We'll see you again next week.
If no one hits that 28 or more than 28, who will you be ready to work with?
I'm quite ready to form a coalition amongst the opposition party. But we will not form a coalition with Fiji First.
Will SODELPA consider a coalition with NFP?
We'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Some people are receiving the same salaries today which they were receiving in 2012. Look at what salary the ministers are drawing. Prime Minister gets $1,000 a day, roughly.
Mr. Rabuka, what is your stand on Itoke land?
I said in Fijian, and on the two in the Sangan Lewan. It is ours, but we have no control over it.
They will go for every boat in this country. We will go for every boat in this country.
We have identified $1 billion of wastage in the budget 1 year.
Review the laws. Review the laws. Review the structure.
After the election?
Otherwise, we'll make false promises.
I don't want you to make false promises. I'm just asking you because there's people wanting to know. As an aspiring Prime Minister, How do you look at that?
You talking about Mahendra?
I'm talking about you.
Oh, I thought you were saying expiring Prime Minister.
Savenaca. This is Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan. Sponsored by Salt and Pepper Home Decor. Living in high quality. Watch it live on the Fiji Village Facebook page.